Hi guys, I'm Danica and this is Couponing and Cooking with the Gabb. Hi guys, I'm Danica and this is Couponing and Cooking with the Gabbs. And this episode is going to be part of our Thanksgiving special for you guys for this week. Now for today we have numerous different recipes that we're going to present to you guys. But for this particular video, this one is going to be desserts. So I'm going to be making a caramel trifle or trifle. I never say that word correctly, but that's what we're going to be doing today. Now, I'm not making a scratch cake. Not for today. I will for Christmas. But for today, I'm going to be using a box cake mix. But we're going to do a little bit of a twist and variation to it to make it a little bit more festive and then also a little bit more rich because this is Thanksgiving and yes, we do a lot of rich foods. And then I will be making from scratch the icing, the caramel icing. Well, this is my variation of a caramel icing. So I just wanted to go ahead and share that with you guys. So let's go ahead and get started. What we are going to do is make sure that we go ahead and start our oven. So I'm going to go with 350 degrees to preheat my oven for the cakes to go in. And this is prior to even starting your mixing process. Make sure that your oven is preheated. Now, everyone does have a different kind of oven. You may have electric, you may have gas. And then that does vary by brand as well. For mine, I have GE electric. So just adjust according to your own personal stove. Okay, now, the next thing we're going to do after we preheat our oven is you can use whatever kind of spray that you like. I use butter spray. I'm going to spray my pans down. Not a lot, just a little bit. And this is to keep them from sticking. Now, these two particular pans are non-stick, but I spray them anyway. Just to coat a light coating. If you do it too heavy, then the sides of your cake are going to be yellow. But we're going to be doing a trifle. I can never say that word for some odd reason. Here's the bowl really quickly before we move on. This is what it looks like. So they have the different sizes. So whatever size you have, if you have one or if you wanted to try to do it this way, this is sort of, you would call it a medium trifle bowl. And all it does is just give you layers of whatever you put in it. It doesn't even have to be a dessert. You can do like a 7-layer dip or something like that, or a taco dip for like tailgating or something. So you can do what you want to with it. But for today, we will be using it for cake. Okay, now after you spray the side, you spray your bottoms and your sides of your cake pan, you're going to get some flour. I would prefer to use all-purpose. Now this one I've already been using, but it doesn't really matter. It doesn't have to be a brand new bag of flour. So we're just going to take a pinch, just a pinch, and we're going to just dust it a little bit on the bottom. Now what I do is, because you see that speckled, is I pat my pans. And I pat it down. And pat it like you mean it. If you need a little bit more, put a little bit more. But just sprinkles. Because if you do put too much, that's any cake. Doesn't have to be box, it can be scratch. When you're dusting your pans, if you put too much, then it's going to be stuck to the bottom of your cake. Just like if you put too much spray. Now, another method you could use is to take a stick of margarine or a stick of butter and just use your hands. Or use the stick and you can grease the sides and the bottom that way. So you just want enough so that it's coating that whole bottom. And I'd rather do a little pinch at a time and pat, because I can shake any excess off into the sink. Because if you, like I said, if you do too much at one time, it's gonna gum up the bottom of your cake. You can always add, but you can't take it away unless you wash it and start over. So I just want a good dust. And like I said, any excess, you just pat it into the sink. So that it looks like that. Okay? Now let's go ahead and do the next one. Okay, now here is the second one. Just lightly dusted on the bottom for both of those. Now, for now, they're on my stove, but I'm not going to leave them there. I don't want the butter to start cooking from this oven heating up, so I'm just going to set them to the side. Okay, now guys, since we have our cake pans dusted and set to the side, like I said, it depends on how big your trifle bowl is, how many layers you want to do. I am doing 4 layers, so I do have 4 pans dusted and buttered and everything and ready to go. So now, this is what I am going to use. This is Betty Crocker Super Moist Cake Mix, and it's a yellow box cake. Now, the variation that I do, a lot of people just go according to the directions that are on the actual cake box on the back. I never do that. I always use other ingredients instead. So let's go ahead and get those open. Okay, so go ahead and dump them into whatever bowl you're using. If you have a stand mixer, then that will be best. My grandmother passed about maybe 4 years ago, so I only ended up with chosen few things from when she passed, and this is her bowl. I don't have a stand mixer, I have a hand mixer. So that's what I'm going to be using today, and that's why it's just sitting here like this. This is hers, so this is what I'm going to use. My grandmother was really, really big for holidays, Thanksgiving especially, and Christmas. More or less Thanksgiving, everyone would go to her house. Everyone. It didn't matter if you cooked yourself at home or not. You got to go to grandma's house. So that's just what that was. So all I'm doing right now is just dumping both of my boxes into the mixing bowl. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this. Okay, now I do still use the actual measurements that they put on the box, but instead of using water, I'm going to be using milk because, like I said, this is going to be a little bit more rich. This is Thanksgiving. I actually never use water in my cake mixes. I always use milk. Now, it depends on you personally what kind of milk you use. If it's going to be whole, which will be preferred for this, but today I'm going to be using 2%. Okay, so according to the box, it's asking for 1 cup of water. So since this is a double recipe, I'm going to be using 2 cups of milk. And this is a 2-cup measuring cup already, so I just need to measure it in. And yes, the milk is regular, just cold milk. And just pour it right on in. And then also, guys, make sure you have some kind of spoon around if you're using a hand mixer so that you can kind of scrape the sides down halfway through the mixing process. Now, next is asking for a 1/2 cup of vegetable oil. So, I'm not using butter today. I'm going to be using Imperial margarine. So I already have, now I do a lot of cooking for Thanksgiving, so I have just a regular container with all of my butter sticks. I had 8 in here originally. I used 1 so far for dinner yesterday. So these are already room temperature and softened. So these are not coming directly out of the refrigerator. And the same thing with my eggs. I put them in a container for everything that I need, and then and that's for the entire meal. And then I just put them in a container in the fridge, and depending on what I'm cooking like for today, I'm going to be using their slightly cool or room temperature eggs. Those are going to be best. Okay, so for a 1/2 cup of what they're saying for oil, I'm going to be using a 1/2 cup of margarine, which is 1 full stick. So we're just going to open that up and put it right on in. But like I said, make sure that it is softened, because if it's hard and you start mixing, that butter's going to fly out of your mixer everywhere. And that's going to be a big fat mess for you to clean later. Okay, now we're going to do 3 eggs. So let me get some paper towel because this is still poultry, so I don't want it directly on my counter. So I'm going to still add 3 eggs. And we're going to put that just directly into the bowl. And I'm not doing any separating now. Not for this cake of the egg white and the yolk. I'm going to use the whole egg. Some recipes, depending on what kind of cake you're using, call for either egg yolk or egg whites. So always be careful of that. So let me go ahead and get rid of this. Okay, now we're going to make it a little bit more festive. Now, that's my fault. I thought I had pure vanilla in the cabinet because I always try to keep those things just for the holiday. But that's the only one I don't have out of all of my extracts. I don't have pure vanilla. I must have used it all and didn't remember. So I am still going to use it, but I'm going to use the imitation vanilla extract. The difference between the two, you can't taste the difference directly if not in the cake. But once you put everything together inside of the cake, there is a slight difference, but it's okay. It's not a big deal. So we're going to use a half, not a full, but a half tablespoon of vanilla extract. And we're going to put that just right on in because this is a yellow box cake, not a white box cake. So that vanilla is going to add a little bit more flavor to your cake. Okay, now once we have everything in that we need, we're going to go ahead and start mixing. So let me get my spoon ready. And let's get started. Just go ahead and mix. Now, because like I said, I'm using a hand mixer in a bowl, not a full stand mixer, I'm going to mix this halfway, scrape down my sides and bottom to make sure I have everything incorporated together and it's nice and creamy and smooth. I did go ahead and put them in the oven on 350. They were preheated. The oven was preheated. I did use 4 different pans. I'm using 2 other different ones that I had as spares, but that's fine. They still cook just the same. I use them for other things as well, so I've had these a whole lot longer. These are my grandmother's, so these are non-stick. These are just regular metal. Now, there's going to be a difference between the two because one is metal and one is non-stick. These came out a little browner than these, which it really doesn't matter. Once you assemble it, you're not going to even see that part anyway because the icing is going to be covering it. But if you have 4 non-stick, that's great. If you have 4 metal, then that's great too. Now, if you guys do not know how to check to see if your cakes are done, these are completely done. What you're going to do is use just a regular toothpick. Where is my pot holder? And what you do is, now these have been in for 25 minutes, and that also varies with your cooking times as well, whether you're using non-stick versus metal. Your metal is going to be a little slightly longer than your non-stick. So what you do is, now I can hold it up this way because it's done. If it's not done, that's going to start dripping. You take your toothpick and you stick it right in the middle. You can make a couple holes if you want. And then if your toothpick comes out completely clean, then your cakes are done. If you have batter on there, they are not done. Put them back. Okay, and then always be careful of whoever is in your house bumping around. Your cakes will sink and fall in the middle. So be careful once you put your cakes in the oven. Always make sure that you don't have anyone around that's bumping. Okay, now this one is for the metal. We're going to stick the toothpick in just in a couple places straight in the middle. And see that? It came out completely clean. Let me make sure you guys can see that. This toothpick is completely clean, not even a piece of cake on it. So these are 100% done. So let me go ahead and show you what you need to do for the next part. Okay, guys, now this is just right outside of my kitchen. If you guys have followed me for a while, I did move back in September. I went on a YouTube break, So I did let you guys know that I downsized. So my kitchen area is super duper small. So I created another area just right outside of my kitchen just for Thanksgiving, because I already know I'm going to need a lot more space. So I just set up this table right outside of my kitchen, and I'm going to use this area to let my cakes cool. So I do have them on wire racks, and those racks are sitting on drying mats right here, which is perfectly fine. So I have 2 here. And then I also have 2 right here. So we're going to let those go ahead and cool. And then in a minute, we're going to take a knife and we're going to run around the sides. Also, guys, for your cake doneness, if they are separating from the sides, that means they have cooked very, very well. So as you can see, my cakes have separated from the sides on all of them. So that's perfectly fine. Okay, so for the next part, what we're going to do is we're going to flip them, invert them once we run a knife around the sides to go ahead and separate the cakes from the pan. But make sure that they're completely cool. Like they're cooling now. I can touch them, but they're still too warm. So I'm going to let them continue to just sit here and rest. And then I'm going to show you how to invert them. And then they're going to continue cooling that way, all the way 100% cool. And then we're going to go ahead and assemble our trifle. Okay, guys, now I'm going to go ahead and show you how to invert your pans. But first, what I want you to do is just take a regular butter knife. And you're going to stick it on the sides and run it around to finish the separation from the pan. Okay? Now, once you've done that, now we can go ahead and invert. Now, our pans have cooled where I can actually touch the pan. So I'm going to take this cooling rack. If you have more than 4, by all means, just use another one. I only have the 4, so I'm going to use what I have. Now, I'm going to take the rack and I'm going to place it directly on top of the cake. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and flip it. Okay, now once it's flipped, if you want to, you can tap the top to separate the bottom from the pan so that it does not crumble up on you. So you can peep just a little bit. Oh, this one went ahead and separated, which is fine. And there you go. Now I did a little bit here and here and here. Now if you're doing a regular cake, if you're going to ice it, no one's going to see these little spots right here anyway, but I'm doing a trifle, so I'm going to end up chopping this down a little bit anyway, so, and you're never going to see it regardless, but this is what it looks like once you invert it, and it can continue cooling. So now I'm going to do the next one. Let me come around on the other side. It'll be a lot easier that way. I hope I'm not in my lighting and you guys can see. Okay, now once I go ahead and go around it with the butter knife, I'm going to go ahead, place my cooling rack up once again on the top and invert my cake. Now, there's another trick to this as well. If your cake is stuck in your pan and you really need it to come out and look like this, another option is you take cool towels, like a washcloth or a dish towel, something like that. Run it under cold water, wring it out really good, and you lay it on top of your pan like this. You just lay it right on top and let it sit there for a little while, and then come back and try it again. And that way you won't tear up your cake. So let's see what happened with this one. Did it work? Yes. So, yes, I did take a little piece out of there. It had a little hole right here, so I just took it out the pan and got stuck, but that's okay. So I have a perfect cake right here as well. Okay, now let's go ahead and I'll show you guys how to assemble your cakes. I'm going to go ahead and invert the other 2, and I'll show you how to assemble them. Okay, guys, now we're going to go ahead and get into the assembly portion of the cake. Now, you can use a regular sifter if you have one. I don't know, today is just not my day, and my sifter and my hand mixer both went out today during this video. So we're going to improvise, but if you have a hand sifter, or you can use a hand colander, something to that effect, because what we're going to do is powdered sugar and flour in particular, they ball up. What you don't want is balls in your icing. It's going to make it lumpy and not good. So we're going to sift through the powdered sugar to make it nice and silky smooth. So I'm going to be using a hand colander. Like I said, my hand sifter just went out right now. So, and that happens, so you have to improvise. I'm going to go ahead and pour the powdered sugar. I'll put a measurement for you guys in the video for this. Like I said, I eyeball everything. And I'm going to pour it just directly into the hand colander. So now, what we're going to do is just tap the sides. And dust it down. That's why I say use a big bowl. And just make sure it doesn't go everywhere. But we're just pulling out all the little balls and lumps that we do not want in our icing. So just go ahead. Now this is a little lengthy process right here, but it's worth it. So go ahead and just sift through your powdered sugar. Okay guys, so this is what I'm talking about as far as the little balls that you don't want. If you guys can see that. And yes, this is messy. But see these little hard balls right here? This is what you're trying to get out of your powdered sugar by sifting it. Okay, now let's go ahead and this is the first batch. I'm going to do this one more time because I think I need a double. And then we're going to go ahead and start up our brown sugar base. Okay guys, now we're going to go ahead and start our assembly process. So, like I said, this is a medium trifle bowl. So, I'm going to have to cut my cakes down. So, you can go ahead and put it up on top so you can see how much you need to shave off the sides. And it doesn't have to be 100% perfect because you're just going to get it on down in there. And this is going to be refrigerated overnight. So, for my bowl, it looks like I need about maybe a ½ inch off the sides. So, I'm just going to cut with a really sharp knife. And don't cut your counters. Or use one of the plastic, or if you have a glass cutting board. But I'm not cutting hard, so I'm not going to cut my counter. So, we're just going to go around this whole cake. This layer, I'll say. Now, we did make 4 layers. If you don't need the other layer, you can put it in a Ziploc bag and freeze it. That's not a problem. And then these sides right here, just eat them. Okay, now let's see if that's good enough to get down in our bowl. Nah, we need to cut a little bit more. But, I mean, it's okay. So make sure that you guys get it all the way down to the bottom. And it's okay if it smashes a little bit. That'll never be seen anyway, so it doesn't really make a big difference. I've also done this with a red velvet cherry tort. I did that last year, and I did post it up on Facebook as well. If you guys wanted to look up Couponing at its Finest Facebook group, it is posted there as well as the recipe. So once you have it all the way down the way you want it, now let's go ahead and get started on the actual icing portion. So we're just going to get rid of some of those ends. And if you, like I said, if you want to eat them, eat them. We're not going to use them. Not at this time. Not the bottom portion. If you wanted to set them to the side to make a little decoration on the top, you could. That's what I did with the red velvet one. And that one was layered with cake, cherry pie icing, and then whipped cream. That one's more Christmassy. So we're going to set this to the side. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and get ready to do my version, actually, of the caramel base. And what I'm going to use is butter and light brown sugar. That's it. Now, as another variation, if you wanted to use sweetened condensed milk, the thick one, not evaporated, the thin one, you could do that and make it more like a dulce de leche, however you pronounce that. And then once again, I'll put measurements for this into the video. Now I'm doing this in multiple layers. Now, one thing about this, you have to move quickly. Once you get ready to put your powdered sugar in, you got to move really quickly because it's going to harden up on you very, very quickly. Okay, so now I'm going to add to this pot. I'm going to go ahead and cut it on. Now we're going to do this low and slow. So I'm cutting it on, I usually do a medium, but this time we're going to do low. And we're going to let this just melt down. So this right here is about 2 tablespoons of butter. I'm going to add a little bit more. This is one of the ones I already previously used for something else, and it was already softened. So waste not, want not. So now that's about 4 tablespoons of butter. So we're going to go ahead and let that start melting down. Now you can already see that it's starting to melt down. It melts very quickly. You don't need it on a high heat. And make sure that you're stirring this so that you can incorporate that butter down into that brown sugar. And actually, I think I'm going to add just a little bit more to this. A little bit more brown sugar. I don't think I have enough to make it through the whole thing. But I also want to save some for my my sweet potato casserole for tomorrow. So I don't need any more butter. This is already melting down really well, really well. So this is melting down really well. So I'm going to add just a little bit, maybe 1 more tablespoon of butter to make it a little more silky. And once again, this is already softened. And I'm going to put this one to the side because I just used it for brown sugar. So we're going to go ahead and continue to stir this and melt it down. Make sure that all your butter, you don't have clumps of butter in there. Make sure it melts all the way down. Okay, now we have that all melted down. So I'm going to turn this off. And it's nice and warm. Give it a good stir and scrape your sides. It's nice and smooth. So now I'm going to transfer this over into my mixing bowl. The whole thing. Okay. Okay, now we're going to add. Now I have like just a big spoon here. I'm going to add my powdered sugar. Now once again, you do have to move quickly. Drop it in. Mix it in. Very quickly. Now I made a little bit extra of both just in case, so I don't have to intermittently try to do it. And this is something that you need to do very quickly. So once you mix that around, make sure you get it really good with that powdered sugar. Make sure you get it in. Mix it like you mean it. Don't play with it. or else you're going to have lumps. So go ahead and mix that in really, really smooth. Okay. And there you go. There's your caramel right there. Nice and smooth. Nice and caramel colored. If you guys can see that. See, it's nice and caramel colored and smooth. Now, we're going to go back to our trifle bowl. And we're going to pour, not all of it. We're going to pour some of that in. I'm going to pour a bit. Then I'm going to stop. And then I'm going to get my little flat tool. And I'm going to spread it around and see where else I need it. Make sure you guys get the outside where the glass is, because that's the part that you're going to see. Looks like I need a little bit more. And then I can clean this up later. Or eat it. So we're going to spread that to the outside so that you can see a layer of caramel. And actually, guys, this is the first time I've ever done it with a trifle. I just thought of the idea from what I did last year for Christmas, like I told you guys. So I thought, why not do it for Thanksgiving with caramel? That might be something good to do. You can put as much or as little as you want. But just make sure you get those sides so that it can be seen on the outside of what the dessert actually is. Okay? Now, I got that layer done. And it's nice and smooth on top. And you can see it on the sides. Now, let's cut the next layer of cake and get it on in there and finish our assembly. If we need to make more icing, we can just go from there, because don't forget, we did extra. Okay, guys, I went ahead and just cut off the sides of the top layer. Now, what I ended up doing was just going ahead and doing the bottom two layers are bottom up. The top layer is bottom down. So that's just how I chose to do it. So I did have to make more icing. So we're going to go ahead and put that last icing. Now, don't forget, you must work fairly quickly because you don't want it to harden up on you. You see how it's trying to harden up on me? So I'm going to mix that just a little bit to get it moving again. And then however much you want on this top, you can pour what you want. You can use it all. You can use a little. It's totally up to you how you want to decorate your top. And then just smooth it on around. And then make sure you have a clean dish rag or a dish towel, washcloth or something wet to clean up your sides, because this is a little messy. So make sure you just get those edges. Sorry, guys. Get those edges really, really well, because that's the part that you see on the side. That's kind of the point of a trifle bowl, so that you can see the layers. And then make sure your top is like really, really nice and smooth and pretty and presentable. So I'm just going to go across the top with my little paddle thing. And that's it. And then, like I said, if you wanted to, you can take some of those little cake pieces that you cut off the side, break them up, and sprinkle them over the top. Which I think, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Now, make sure you use the softer parts of them. And don't do too terribly much where it looks confusing, I guess you could call it. Just a little bit goes a long way, just for a little decor. And then the cake came out super moist. That piece fell, but I'll get it. Just pick it up and sprinkle a little bit around the sides. I don't want really big pieces. I think I'm going to leave it just like that, guys. That's pretty much going to be it for me. Okay, so here is our homemade caramel trifle. So you can see how the caramel is dripping kind of sort of down, and you can see each layer of cake. So it looks really, really nice and really good. The icing is not super sweet because the cake is not super sweet. So because we're using 2 different sugars on our icing, with our cake not being super duper sweet, it balances it out. So, with that said, guys, that's pretty much going to go ahead and wrap up this episode of Cooking and Couponing with the Gabbs. So, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and happy cooking and couponing with love. Bye.